Hello. So how is everybody today? I'm not having a great day, to be honest with you. We sometimes all commend my husband on his wonderful patience for sharing me with the world, but today he's feeling a little frustrated. So it's not my best day ever. But look, I'm still here for sympathy and reassurance for people who are working on dealing with a president, and a president who inspires governors to actively undermine public health and the economy. I think Daniel Dale is a Canadian journalist who offers that outsider's influence on being able to talk about the president without deference. And Daniel Dale writes, the president is emphasizing that other than the people who die and don't require major medical assistance, people with the coronavirus don't die or require major medical assistance. Because he complained on Hannity tonight, Trump complained, that the media keeps reporting on coronavirus cases. He said, all the time cases, and those cases get better. In most cases, most cases, in almost, I mean, literally most cases, they automatically cure, they automatically get better. So you're at risk of someone who doesn't mind 1% of Americans potentially dying, because he can still say most of you will get better. That's enough. So yes, he's right. Most cases get better. Some people don't get better in the sense of the word fully recovered. We don't know how long-term the impacted lung capacity will go on for, but a lot of people have been reporting long-term symptoms following getting ostensibly better, having recovered from coronavirus. People are still hyping on hydroxychloroquine. If it worked, but it was just Democrats suppressing its usage, then it would be used around the world where Democrats aren't in contention and there's not an election. But in other nations, they're still looking at the science and saying hydroxychloroquine still seems to be associated with an elevated risk of heart problems because COVID-19 in severe cases impacts heart function. And hydroxychloroquine seems to compound that, particularly when used with antibiotics such as azithromycin. So yes, Trump is even trying to use the idea that he's trading lives for profits on the idea that some people will be okay with that. But it's not even true. He's temporarily puffing up the stock market. He's temporarily trying to increase profits by sending your children back to school without adequate safeguards in place. But that's just pushing the can down the road to buy a postponement of the worst conditions, the worst outcomes, in order to let you vote for him or let some gullible people vote for him, and then have all the crashes and all of the hospital collapses happen after November. And he just hopes he can postpone it for that long. So yes, when we say stop the propaganda, we're pretty much talking about the people who lie about the coronavirus, who pressure the Federal Reserve to betray their charters of governance and pump taxpayer money or pump government money into the stock market in order to artificially inflate it just until November. That's their goal, just to give rich people enough time to reorganize their stock portfolios to minimize risk and to maximize, that will inadvertently maximize the pain felt by poor people who don't know any better. When I say poor, I mean relatively less wealthy people who are putting their stimulus checks into the stock market and pumping up stocks like Tesla with a crazy wave of underinformed enthusiasm, when Tesla doesn't generate very much profit at all. And it generates some, and people look to it as if it's a savior from the under-addressed problem of climate change. But Tesla is not a savior, and In many cases, Elon Musk is purposefully manipulating the stock market through Twitter, through saying things to Twitter to indicate whether or not he thinks the stock should rise or fall. Despite having agreed with the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, that he wouldn't do that he wouldn't use social media manipulatively to affect stock price of Tesla. So, wow, lots of people listening, but not a lot of people commenting. I don't know whether that's because you're enthralled by my commentary on the likely impending economic collapse in the US, which may very well drag the rest of the world down with it. That's what usually happens with a large economic crash. The US is a large economy. Even just the state of California is the 8th largest economy in the world. It's that productive, which is one reason why the federal government can effectively print money, because money is a concept and it's trading off the potential that people see in America, even as Trump undermines it. America switched from having slavery as its engine of profit and growth to migration being the engine of profit and growth, to an increasing population that increasingly consume things and keep the economic trajectory going up, keep living standards going up, keep educational standards from going up. Hey. It's still sad I miss my normal audience, because they would be more sympathetic to me in this moment, having to deal with my husband being cranky with me. Oh, well, they'll listen back to it and they'll probably message me and say, "You're okay. We know that you devote so much time to this labor of love, which is contributing to the ongoing dialogue around Trump, around America, around what needs to be done to save America from the worst of a pandemic that is still rampaging uncontrolled through a lot of red states with a lot of red governors who look to Trump. There's states with Republican governors who aren't entirely Trump-led, who make more scientifically informed decisions to preserve the lives and livelihoods of their constituents. But there are others who seek to hitch their wagon to Trump because they know what an effective propaganda ecosystem it is. There's Trump, there's Fox News. They both say the same things, and that can brainwash people. And there's an element on the far left that have an overlap with propaganda as well. They keep telling each other that Bernie Sanders is the true leader of America, and they keep trying to sabotage the Democratic candidate in the same way they did in 2016, with the extra stimulatory measure of that candidate being a woman. And now they just got stuck. They got stuck in a mental habit of deriding the establishment as the establishment. The establishment is Black voters who have voted for Democratic candidates because they've seen the potential there for good governance to improve their lives, for good governance to address the issues of creating opportunity for everybody, and then potentially also at least directing some government impetus towards redressing the problem of embedded disadvantage, of calcified, institutionally mandated discrimination, where some people have not been able to get mortgages because they've been in a red line district. And then that situation has compounded over time, making it very hard for people to access social mobility, for people to move out of their neighborhoods. They've faced baked in bank map delineation saying, don't give people government-backed mortgages if they live in these districts, which we have lined with a red pen. Don't do it. Those people can't be allowed to move. That opposition to Black success, to say we have to keep people in their place in order to safeguard our mental framework, in order to safeguard our perceptions that we never did anything wrong with slavery because there's some inherent inferiority embedded in this arbitrary racial hierarchy which we are imposing on the world. So you can't have access to social mobility. You can't move out of your neighborhoods because your success would prove us wrong. It would prove your humanity, and it would negate our denialism and our cowardice towards history, that we don't want to admit what we did. We don't want to admit that we were wrong. We don't want to make reparations. We're too scared to confront the issue. Reparations might not actually be that hard. It might not be that inconvenient. It might be an economic stimulus to the country in general, for people to go, phew, We don't have to spend so much time and energy in preserving a fraudulent mindset. We don't have to keep sabotaging ourselves just in order to keep government money out of the hands of Black Americans because so many people are so hardwired to want a continuation of discrimination against Black people. Oh, thank you. The sympathy is much appreciated. That's awesome that 40 people are listening. Look, I'm here. I broadcast a reasonable amount, but the last few days I haven't. I've been putting my energy into, I guess, my family a little bit. They enjoy listening to songs from Hamilton, and I've been lacking a light bulb for this particular room. That's the main reason. Jack points out, vote, 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 which is true. And we can go beyond that to say, register people to vote, make social contracts, informal social contracts with your friends and family, that they will vote, that they will go with you, that they will recognize the urgency of the moment. Let's form a society with the word urgency in it, because people might continue to see Trump falling in the polls. And he will continue to fall in the polls because it's a function of America's infection rate. As more Americans get infected, more independent voters come to know someone personally who's infected, and that lowers their susceptibility to believing the propaganda that emanates from the White House. There's all manner of propaganda you can get from all different angles. We can have a Chinese propaganda person here claim that Trump is a big celebrity. He's a big celebrity all over the world. But he's increasingly famous for sabotaging America's response to a global pandemic. I think my husband might still be cranky. I can't tell. He may have washed his hands in a cranky way. Maybe I should get off the internet and actually go talk to him. I don't know. Sometimes people need a little space. And I think that's one thing that could really strengthen society's resistance to all manner of ills. If you accept that you don't always have to instantly make up with people, and you don't feel dependent on people. So if women feel empowered to remember they have the option of leaving bad relationships if they're bad, or strengthening themselves, strengthening their own convictions. You don't have to rely on other people's opinions of you. So women who are in bad domestic situations, if we could empower them, and if we gave them additional power through the legal system, and at a local level, if different people adopted these techniques, they've been seen to work. If you give people consequences for bad actions, I'm not talking about my husband at all here. I'm talking about domestic abusers who physically abuse their wives. They can have consequences like having to report to police stations, escalating hierarchy of consequences. Those have been shown to be really effective because they help show abusers that society's eye is on them. When people feel seen, they behave better. And that's been demonstrated with very simple psychological experiments, which show that the quantifiable amount of money in a charity donation box increases if you put a picture of two eyes on the box. You know those charity boxes where you take a sweet and you leave a coin? Some people just take sweets, but the amount of money relative to taken sweets increases substantially if you put a picture of eyes on the box. It also increases if you put a mirror near the box so people can see a glimpse of their own face as they take a sweet and decide if they need to reciprocate and add money. Quiet time is good, yes. We should just block honeycomb. I can do it. It'll be a little bit difficult to type, but I can do it. Oh, I'll let you guys know that I have a Discord group that can send you notifications every time I broadcast. And if you're keen on signing up for that, how could you let me know? Any way, if you let me know through Twitter, through my Twitter handle, which is davcat43. If you let me know now, even I'll write your names down and add your Twitter handles to a Discord group, or message you so you get the app, the link to the Discord app, which will notify you when I broadcast. So yes, I think that's all I'll say for today, other than be cheerful about the Supreme Court decisions, because it doesn't matter so much to expose Trump's financial records. They've been exposed a lot. The main thing that changes people's minds about Trump, because largely he's Teflon, his approval rating is immune to scandals that reveal corruption. And that's usually the case with fascists, because fascists exert a hold over people's emotions that circumvents rational thought. They appeal to an archetype, and that becomes a hook into people's limbic system, the little emotional circuitry in their brain. So they don't go, oh, did a scandal happen? They say Trump is America, and you criticize Trump, you criticize America. Also, he told us not to listen to the news. The news is all negative. Fox News also tells us that the rest of the news is all lies and prejudiced and wrong. So we don't pay attention to any of that. So scandals, even financial scandals, are sometimes not impactful. But Trump's saying every day to cameras that the virus is nothing, that what needs to be done is reopen the economy. People develop their own opinions on that, and he doesn't realize it, but his propaganda machine is not strong enough to withstand the imperious knocking on the door of the COVID pandemic that says, you know someone who's lost a job, you know someone who's sick, you know your local hospital is getting full, and that the ICU beds are getting full, or if not you, a neighboring state. You get to know more, and reality becomes more difficult to dismiss. It's not just someone reports negatively on Trump. Someone is reporting negatively on people's lives. And that's when fascists usually begin to lose their power, when the negative consequences of their corruption and incompetence at leadership become too heavily felt. So I don't like to spend too much time railing against Trump voters for falling for propaganda. People have fallen for propaganda across time and history. And yes, it has to do with human cowardice. It has to do with human tendencies to externalize the reason for problems instead of looking within, or looking closely at domestic obstacles and domestic limitations to prosperity and happiness for everyone, to limitations to the ability of governments to govern in the interests of their people, rather than lie to people, say things to appease them, but still govern in the interests of donor classes, people like the people who run the NRA on behalf of gun manufacturing lobbies. America has suffered for quite a long time under the disproportionate and inordinate influence of people with money. And corporations are different from governments. Corporations don't govern to benefit people, they govern to advance the interests of a corporation. That's what makes them different. They were founded to sell a product and to derive a profit. It's not that profit in itself is evil. The pursuit of profit helps employ people, but that's separate from governance, in which people agree to found a nation together, have some foundational documents, and then elect leaders to safeguard the interests of the people in general. And they do so in a utilitarian fashion to try and maximize the amount of prosperity experienced, and to try and observe basement limitations as well of not actively harming people in minority groups, to not disadvantage minority groups. So the cowards who vote for Trump, or who fell prey to his key appeal, which is to say, I will blame other people. You won't have to deal with the limitations of Republican governors or overly generous deference to companies, which is sometimes keeping a lid on your ability to enjoy a living wage, on the ability of your society to be cohesive and prosper, with adequate social safety nets for people, with a Affordable Care Act that's adequately supported at a government level and so makes health insurance cheaper for everyone. The Affordable Care Act would have been better if the Republican Party hadn't decided to oppose everything that Obama proposed out of a racist and partisan impulse to damage the endeavors of a Black Democratic president. They knew they could trade it to their own interests, to gaining and enhancing their own power, if they built on people's partisan prejudices already against the Democratic Party with the aggravating compounding factor of racism. People were too susceptible to believing untrue claims made against a Black president. People were too susceptible because it irked their understanding of the world. Historically, they had already reconciled themselves to saying slavery happened, but it had to happen. We didn't do anything that wrong. It's just some people are inherently inferior. When that worldview gets contradicted over and over again by reality, look at this strong, intelligent, competent person. That was too painful to believe because that caused too much cognitive dissonance with deeply held worldviews about the racial hierarchy, an arbitrary racial hierarchy that said this skin color is associated with virtue and competence, and that skin color is associated with inferiority and incompetence. And there's a very striking statistic that illustrates this point, that in 2016, a certain percentage of Republicans surveyed, 16% of them said the economy was good. 16% of Republicans surveyed. And a few months later, when Trump was inaugurated, say in March of 2017, 38% of Republicans said the economy was good. So a very short space of time, showing the contribution of their emotional embrace of a white man, a white Republican man, and their repudiation of the economy under a Black Democratic leader. Perception is everything. Oh, hello, Doug. Do you want to broadcast with me? I'm so down. I'm so down right now. But talking to people is always a good lift and a good feeling to contribute to understanding. If you have a chance to chat, that would be awesome. And I mean chat live or chat to ourselves. I need cheering up. Yes, and the thing is, perception isn't reality. But it's fair to say that because to many people, their perception is reality because they're not capable of acknowledging the ephemeral nature of perception. That perception should be additive. You add more to it when you learn. But they didn't respond to statistics about the economic recovery under Obama because their opinions were not flexible. Their opinions were reality, and they wouldn't hear any argument about that, because they'd already heard it from multiple Republican media sources, from Fox, Tucker saying it, Rush Hannity saying it, that Obama was terrible, that everything was terrible, that the economy was terrible. It was terrible in 2008. It got better over time. And no, the economy doesn't turn on a dime. It's hard to claw back jobs. It's hard to claw back prosperity. When people don't have any money, they don't spend money. And that's the situation that Trump is amplifying at present. So many newly unemployed people, and yet we still have to fight against propaganda that Trump is a competent economic manager. He's exposed the economy to huge crash, and he's just trying to delay the crash until you vote for him and keep him in power and keep him out of jail. John would love to. You're flat too. Poor darlings, both of us. You can do it at 4:30. Excellent. Your internet's struggling. Maybe I will. Elle, if I give you a link to this broadcast, you don't have to join the broadcast, but when it's over, we could chat on a video if you wanted. What I'll do is I'll set you the option. All right. What I might do now is share some bookmarks. Yes, but no, I'm saying you don't have to appear live. Actually, if I use my, no, I don't know. If I used an iPad to access Periscope, then I would be able to just have you call in audio. But I'm using live stream, which only allows me to have guests in a shared screen. So that's why I sent you a link so that after I stop the broadcast, you can follow that link now if you want, darling. And then I just don't hook you up to the screen. You can just stay there in a corner. And when the broadcast ends, I can click on you and share a screen with you and chat like that, if you like it. But the it's just a question of having enough. Look at that. From the moment the department was born, critics, Republicans almost exclusively, have sought to dismantle it. And that's a function of opposition to desegregation. That's a function of racism, of colorism, of an arbitrary imposition of hierarchy, of a hierarchy of virtue. Saying we don't want our children to be in schools with people of color because we think that there's more virtue embedded in our skin color. And yes, that is why we do have to work hard. We have to work for voter registrations go up, and voter registrations have been falling in some states. So we have to overturn that, because you can't just rely on Republican voters. A lot of Republican voters are in a bubble of propaganda. Hi, Elsa. I see everybody else can. And when I get off the broadcast, then we can chat. So I'll probably do that in 1 minute. Someone's asking me, why do you think so many people accept the delusions of a sociopath? Racism and sexism. Sexism helped the 2016 election, and reality TV I'll add as a third factor. Racism, sexism, reality TV in 2016, and then people sometimes go deeper into a propaganda bubble and can't dig themselves out, even when you no longer have a female candidate running for office. They just dug into that psychological hole now. They've dug down supporting someone who's criminal, and fascism tends to drag people with it. And there's something that some people call the dictator's conveyor belt. You just keep progressing further and further on, because each criminal thing you do, you have to do more criminal things to cover up and obstruct justice. And people that have allied their intellect to Donald Trump find themselves making, yes, more and more bizarre justifications for his actions and the actions of Republicans who enable him and support him. It's hard to wake up from that. The human mind can wed itself to an idea in a position, and they don't get divorced. And you can see that in bad relationships, where people will just have a relationship that gets more and more destructive, but they can't go out of it because they're wedded to that concept of loyalty to that person. Both. Trump is both a symptom and an exacerbating factor, a significantly exacerbating factor of the US downfall. So I'm going to get off the internet now and say goodbye and chat to, oh, Elle, come back. Come back. She's coming back. Good. I'm going to say goodbye to everybody else. Thank you. You're welcome. Take care, and we'll talk again another time. Bye. Bye, broadcasting audience.